Hello, and welcome to Century Snapshot, where we explore the world of the 3rd century. In this episode, we will be learning about South Asia, Buddhism, and much more. Strap yourselves in, because it's learning time. To begin, we must start not in the 3rd century Common Era, but in the 5th century before Common Era, at the birth of Buddhism. During his life, Siddhartha Gautama tossed away his worldly possessions to walk the path to enlightenment, inspiring many to do the same. However, 5th century BCE Buddhism was very different than it is now. That is where Mahayana Buddhism of the 3rd century comes in. Thanks to the efforts of Ashoka the Great, Mahayana Buddhism is spread across South Asia and is made the state religion for India. Later in the century, however, at the death of Ashoka, the Maurya Empire dissolved, and in its place arose the Gupta Empire. The Gupta Empire would eventually expand India to the size we know it as today. Meanwhile, in Central Europe, the Goths are under pressure. Located in modern Germany, the Goths were an egalitarian, nomadic people. However, the expansion of the Roman Empire will cause the Goths to militaristically expand. Reaching the Black Sea, a conflict will break out, resulting in Rome surrendering Dacia. The Goths are positioned to be a large part of the end of Rome and eventually usher in the Dark Ages.
The Moche were part of the pre-Columbian civilization. They were known for the arts. The North focused on metalwork. They made a lot of fine regalia for the elite class. The materials were silver, gold, and copper. The South created ceramics that are decorated with human, animal, plant, and supernatural things. The elite would give these fine ceramics to the lower classes to maintain their support of their power. The Classic period was the peak for the Mayans. Elaborate and artistic lake grand structures were created. The pyramids and temples held ritualistic meanings and were used for storage. Ritual offerings were given to gods like human sacrifice. Deceased leaders and their partners were put to rest in the temples. In addition, special goods could be left there. In North America, one of the time's largest cities, Teotihuacan, was being built in the basin of central Mexico. It eventually reached its max population of 200,000 in the 4th century. Meanwhile, in the future southwestern USA, the Hohokam started to rely on irrigation to grow their crops. They are one of North America's first cultures to do so. There were 2 flourishing kingdoms in Southeast Asia, the Funan Kingdom in the east and the Pyu Kingdom in the west. Hinduism from India, influenced by traders along the coastlines, spread to Indonesia and the west. The Funan Kingdom consisted of what is South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Malaysia today. The Pyu Kingdom, known as Burma today, is flourishing. Its territory was along the China-India trade routes and was heavily influenced by Buddhism. The Thai people of the southern China region are gradually pushed out by the northern Chinese and move south.
It's 200 AD! Military anarchy, inflation, and political assassination threaten to destroy the Empire of Rome. Now you can get into the action with the crisis of the 3rd century action figures. Start in the British Isles, where the Picts, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes are busy eroding the fringes of the empire. Now you and your friends can start an extensive wall-building campaign throughout the Isles.
But we need to resupply.
Head south to España to load up on food, olive oil, wine, and metals. While you're there, don't forget to liberally spread that Latin tongue to forever change the linguistic landscape of the Iberian Peninsula. Watch out for those pesky Christians. They've been knocking on doors here since the 1st century, and they're picking up speed.
But what about Gaul?
The Empire has been weakened by continuous raids from Germanic tribes, contributing to the success of the breakaway Republic of Gaul.
Now with naked fighting action.
But wait, there's something in the air. Now you can decimate the population with your own Plague of Cyprian. Can you reduce the population of Rome by 5,000 people per day? We bet you can!
Plus and oil sold separately. North Africa.
The valiant Queen Zenobia tries to hold together the Republic of Palmyrene against the vicious onslaught of Rome. Who will win in the final showdown with Marcus Aurelius?
Now only you can decide.
With the crisis of the 3rd century action figures.
All figures sold separately.
We'll start over here on the islands of Japan. This century held the transition between the Yayoi period, which lasted from 300 BCE to 250 CE, and the Kofun period, from 250 CE to 538 CE. During the Yayoi period, people began having settled agriculture, using metal tools, and went from pit houses to houses raised above the ground on wooden supports. The Kofun period was named for burial mounds the elite started using. During this period, there were improvements in pottery, the rise of Shinto religion, and the rise to political prominence of a clan called the Yamato. Moving over to the Korean peninsula, it was the ancient Three Kingdoms period, which lasted from 57 BCE to 668 CE. But you'll see here on the map that we're actually dealing with 4 areas, not 3. There are the 3 kingdoms of Kugoya, Silla, and Patsi, and then there's this place called Kaya. During the Three Kingdoms period, things were always shifting, who was allied with who and who was fighting with who. Over here in China, the Han Dynasty was falling apart. It officially ended in 220 CE. One of the things that drove this was the so-called Yellow Turban Rebellion, by peasants upset about things that were going on at the time: famine, drought, plagues, and of course taxes. China broke into 3 kingdoms: the Wei Dynasty in the north, the Shu Han Dynasty in the far interior, and the Wu Dynasty in the south, past the Yangtze River. During this time, some aristocratic clans who owned a lot of land gained power, and eventually one called the Sima would get control over everyone else and found the Qin Dynasty, which finished its takeover in 280 CE. This won the country a couple of decades of peace.
We are going to take a look at the state of the Central Roman Empire during the 3rd century. After a civil war, the Severan dynasty presided over the Roman Empire for 42 years. It was a period of relative peace and stability, allowing for societal development. In Asia Minor, also known as Anatolia, located in a peninsular region that is now modern-day Turkey, Roman architecture, roads, and other infrastructure had been spread to the area. Populations increased, the city of Rome was a metropolis, and the empire and its provinces were wealthier than before. Notable achievements from this period include the Arch of Septimius Severus and Aqua Alexandrina Aqueduct in Rome, the Roman Baths of Ankara in Asia Minor, all of which still exist today. Caracalla instituted his Constitutio Antoniniana decree in 212, which extended citizenship outside of Italy to all free adult men in the entire Roman Empire, raising provincial populations to equal status with the city of Rome itself. By this period, Greece had become a major crossroads of maritime trade between Rome and the Greek-speaking eastern half of the empire. Greek language served as a common language in the eastern provinces and in Italy, and many Greek intellectuals like Galen would perform most of their work in Rome. However, peace was not to last. In 235, Emperor Severus Alexander was assassinated by his own troops, setting off the crisis of the 3rd century, also known as military anarchy or the imperial crisis, which lasted to the year 284. By this time, Roman emperors rotated frequently, as many were killed after short terms in power through assassination or war. The plague of Cyprian, 249 to 262 CE, further weakened the empire with food and manpower shortages. With Roman protections faded from the crisis, the way was left open for 3 separate invasions from the Germanic Goths into Asia Minor. They sacked cities, among them the major city of Ephesus was raided in 263 but soon recovered. The neighboring Persian Empire was also gaining prominence, becoming a threat to the Grecian territories at this time. By 285, Emperor Diocletian took power and managed to end the crisis. In a 20-year reign, he instituted reforms and split the empire, which allowed it to endure until the late 400s. The new religion, Christianity, had been on the rise in the empire, and its influence spread further throughout the 3rd century. Despite persecution from Emperor Diocletian, continued to gain prominence in the coming centuries.
The historic presence of the Middle East is quite the important one. Some of the earliest civilizations in history were first established in the Middle East, dating back to about 3500 BC. The Middle East is widely regarded as the cradle of civilization, and best known as the birthplace of religion. The world's three most profound religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, were all born in the Middle East. Christianity was born from Jewish tradition, and Islam was developed by both Christianity and Judaism, linking all three together. Some could say that the Middle East made its mark through the dichotomy of beliefs. Ancient Syria was a region referred to often in the Bible and was no exception for being written as a religious monument. The city of Damascus and Ebla were some of the oldest recorded settlements in history. Things began to change with more and more religious beliefs being spread across the region. Judea, which gave birth to Christianity, saw disastrous developments. In the year 70 Common Era, a war raged on, and the Roman army captured Jerusalem and destroyed the holy city, dispersing the Jewish people from their homeland. Moving on from less depressing matters, Saudi Arabia occupies about 4/5 of the entire Arabian Peninsula. Arabia is the easternmost part of the Arab world, which also includes Jordan and Iraq. Arabia is important to the Middle East as the main function is within the spice trade routes. Long-distance trade played a major role in the advancements of cultural, religious, and artistic exchanges amongst Europe and Asia. Oh yes, it is quite fascinating. Parthia is an interesting case. Many may know about Julius Caesar and his antics to invade the Parthian Empire. Of course, meeting his unfortunate demise to 60 stab wounds. Oh, ouch, that's got to hurt. Parthia was built upon a strong empire because in 224 Common Era, the Parthians were overthrown by a Persian dynasty called the Sasanians, whom tightened the administration and breathed new life into the struggle against Rome. And finally, we have Iran, which is home to one of the world's oldest and continuous civilizations. Historical and urban settlements dating back to 7000 BC. Iran has played an important role in this region as an imperial power because of its strategic position and the abundance of natural resources, especially with the case of petroleum. By that reason alone, Iran has been influenced by waves of the indigenous, foreign conquerors, and immigrants, leading up to the modern era.